He let her enter the room first while he stayed behind to close the door. She walked in, seeing the room illuminated only by ambient LED lights on the ceiling and the lights coming through the huge windows from the buildings in the bay, followed by a sea that faded into a distant horizon with a "wow." And when he was about to turn on the light, she stopped him. "Don't turn it on. Have you seen this view?" For him, the beauty of the landscape, as breathtaking as it was heightened at that moment by the sight of her presence, her eyes fixed on the world outside, just a few meters ahead of him. It was a feeling, a moment. Perhaps because of everything he had been through until now, he knew this moment would stay with him. Not the night, but this simple moment punctuated by lights in a place that felt strange to him, and the only connection he would have to it would be this moment. She turned around, noticed his serious and deep gaze. She smiled at him. She felt his hesitation. She crossed the few meters that separated them, capturing him in her gaze. He looked into those clear, bright eyes that seemed to reflect the lights of the world outside and sparkled, completely hypnotized and at the same time fearful, as if he wanted to break free from that enchantment. But she didn't let him and moved closer, wrapping her arms around his neck, pressing her lips against his with a softness that surprised him. She felt him tense in her arms. Breaking the kiss, she leaned close to his ear and whispered, "There are no expectations, no illusions, and there's not even a tomorrow. There's tonight, and I've wanted you since the first time I saw you. There is no past, no future, there is now." And with that, she pressed her lips against his again, forcing her tongue, enveloping him, devouring him and giving him a taste of her desire that he finally began to reciprocate. She pulled away from him, led him to the sofa, where she made him sit, took a few steps back, unfastened her dress, and it flowed like water until it settled at her feet, revealing her gloriously naked body. She walked toward him, kneeling in front of him, and slid her body up, searching for another kiss, calmer, less voracious, while she unbuttoned his shirt and caressed his chest and torso as she did so. When she finished, she slid her hand along his erection, over his pants, and let out a laugh. "This one is more fitting," she said with a chuckle, making him laugh too. She unbuckled his belt and removed his pants and then his boxers, revealing him, gripping him, feeling him and massaging him. "Go slow," he asked, half embarrassed. "It's been a few days." "Don't worry," she said with a mischievous look, "if you shoot too soon, I know ways to recharge." And with that, she wrapped her tongue around his glands, taking her first taste and surprising him, slowly moving down his shaft and rising again, gripping him with her lips and sucking him gently. She continued kissing him, sucking him, massaging him, always with her eyes on his and an expression of satisfaction that seemed to heighten the pleasurable sensations filling his senses and increasing in intensity with each passing moment. The sensations became uncontrollable, and he suddenly found himself caught in an orgasm that shook his entire being while he felt himself being sucked by that mouth that wouldn't give him a break. He nearly collapsed, and she came to kiss him on the mouth, still filled with his taste, which they both fully shared in a passionately voracious kiss. "Now that we've resolved the immediate explosion issues," she said, with a liquid fire in her eyes, "how about we tackle the more prolonged ones?" He stood up, picked her up in his arms, and carried her to the huge bed, where he gently laid her down. He finally got rid of his shirt and knelt on the floor between her legs, covering the insides of her thighs with small kisses until he finally tasted her sweet flavor, provoking a shiver and making her let out a moan. He continued to lick her, suck her, sometimes teasing her gently and other times licking or sucking with intensity. Her breathing deepened, and he instinctively tried to match it, varying the intensity, sometimes to tease her, sometimes to give her exactly what she wanted. She, who had had some good lovers, felt herself melting in this man's mouth over and over again, without him giving her a break. Each time she felt herself coming back down to earth, a new wave took over her body and senses, bringing her to a new peak, losing track of time and even of herself, letting herself be enveloped by the waves of pleasure that crashed over her. Finally, utterly surrendered, she looked into his eyes with fierceness, pulled his head and said in a nearly guttural voice, "I want you," and he obeyed her call, following her, pressing his mouth to hers, filled with the taste of her pleasure, and slowly began to invade her, feeling her impatience beneath him as her hips pushed against him, trying to take more of him, and he finally entered her fully in one thrust, making her let out a scream from her lungs as she dug her nails into his back and looked into his eyes, pleading, "Fuck me," to which he gladly acquiesced, taking charge of her, following her, as she lost herself, surrendering completely. The night stretched on until the sun began to cast its light on the horizon, and only then did they surrender, exhausted and satisfied. Paola was gently awakened. "I have to go. I have a flight scheduled soon," Alex said to her with a smile that masked the regret he felt having to leave her now. She sat up, gave him a passionate kiss, and said with a smile that left no doubts, "Whenever you're around, you have my number." He looked at her with a mischievous smile and replied, "That's a good incentive to keep showing up." She winked at him. He gave her one more kiss, grabbed his bags, and left. Hours later, he was back at the headquarters of his job. The first thing he did, as soon as he arrived with Miguel, was to speak with the security staff. He made a point to personally thank all of them. Only after that did he return to what was now his home, being warmly greeted by his 2 employees. That night, he received a phone call from his colleague Paul. "Hi, Paul, all good. All good. You're back now. By now, you must be missing the rooms in Dubai, right?" "No, everything's fine. What's up?" "Just to let you know that we have a replacement for you." "A replacement?" "Yeah. An ambitious guy with a drive. And who's also interested in the money, of course." "But they want to replace me?" "No. But I want to tell you that whenever you want to leave that hole, there will be no obstacles. Just say the word. But as long as you want to stay there, the place is yours. We all see the work you've done, even when you were in a hospital bed. No one is going to do anything behind your back. But when you want." Alex smiled. "Thanks, Paul," noted. They continued to talk about other topics until the end of the call, and the subject dropped there. Life fell back into a relatively routine pattern, although he was now much more alert to his surroundings. And now, from time to time, he made a weekend trip to